Welcome to JCATS, a program that seeks to introduce Japanese, contextualize literature and ideas for use by missionaries and anyone that seeks to share the gospel with Japanese people.
日本人から聞く日本のキリスト教。
Okay, welcome to JCATS. I first want to apologize because I was telling people at CPI Renown conference that this would be posted the week after, which was like 4 weeks ago, because finals. So I wanted to bring on my buddy Joe today, who is a missionary to
Hello.
Japan. If you're on YouTube, you can see Joe. And Joe helped me out with VBSs like a long time ago for a number of years. So he's a
Good
big
years.
veteran of VBSs and children's ministry and other things. So Joe, you want to tell? I also don't always give people's last names or places of work or stuff like that unless they want to. So Joe is going to be a missionary very soon with a very premier mission agency in Japan. And some of you will
I
be
guess you could say
coworkers
that. I
with-
don't know.
No, it's definitely one of the premier missions in Japan. I know because now I work with Gemma. So, you guys are definitely one of our big ones, I think. I don't actually look at the numbers.
Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess generally speaking, so yeah, we are due to I guess you could technically say get back to the mission field in Japan come beginning of March, I guess. So yeah, only a matter of like weeks/months at this point. Yeah, I feel okay saying it's with OMF International. And then we're coming from Sydney, Australia. So many interesting things have happened in my life where as an American, I find myself currently in Sydney and then about to go to Japan. But yeah, that's the very abbreviated nutshell version, I guess.
But are you an American?
Okay. I mean, I still am an American. I feel like in my core, I identify as American, despite
Are you
current
in-
drama happening in the States.
Like
But
an Austral American or something?
I don't know if an official term has been coined yet, but maybe that would be a good option. Yeah, dual citizen, I guess, is maybe the most, I don't know,
So Joe is from
widely used
Chicago
version, but
and is married to an Australian. And Joe and Joe's Australian wife and children will be coming back to Japan for full-time ministry in March
Yep.
with one of the
looking forward to it.
premier sending agencies, OMF. I was at church with the MK today who was running around, and his name is Hudson. So,
Oh yeah, there you go.
yeah.
Yes,
So there you go.
the well-revered Hudson Taylor, which yes, I think OMF draws an okay line. It's not a cult, we don't revere Hudson Taylor
Well, that's a relief.
so much as to cross that line, but yes, fondly admired Hudson. Yeah.
Well, I think he did a good job from what I remember reading about him when I was homeschooled in the 90s. So today, what we're going to talk about, Joe, have you been to a CPI or Renown conference?
I don't believe so. I think I might know what it is, but probably not. Maybe it's good if you explain.
Maybe your wife has or has not. I'm not sure. So it's been around for, I don't know, like 20 years. It's like every other year. It's a big missionary conference in Japan. They have speakers. Often I would say the speakers are sort of to like edify the missionaries, but there's breakout sessions with like networking and talking about mission in Japan topics. It is just getting bigger and bigger every year. This year was the largest. I think it was in Shizuoka, and I think there was a total of like 800 people. Now I think it would be something like 600, maybe to 650 or so, maybe 600 or so attendees, and then children and childcare and volunteers brought the whole number up to like 800. So I had a table for this JCATS for the JCATS ministry, and normally the whole point of this is to talk contextualization, but today I wanted to just do a fun episode and discuss survey results. So at the CPI, I was asking my sort of goal was to ask missionaries what their favorite podcast, Christian podcast, just Christian podcast was. And then speaking to contextualization, what their favorite books about Japan slash sociology slash Christianity, missiology, anything in there, written by a Japanese author. That was the parameters. Not everybody got the parameters. So I have a few of the responses here. My favorite response here, survey. Are you a current missionary, tent maker, or Christian worker in Japan? Circle 1. And I have yes, no, and other. And they circled missionary, which isn't one of the things you're supposed to circle, but I
I guess it
understand.
identified them. So.
Right. Yeah. I think in a sense they saved me some ink from my Daiso pens. The second question is, have you ever read a book by a Japanese author on Japanese thought or Japanese Christianity? If yes, please list. I meant to say up to 3 of your favorites, but I put of to 3 of your favorites. And their answer was a lot. And that's all they wrote.
Very informative.
The last question on here, do you listen to or watch any Christian podcasts or YouTube channels? List up to 3 of your favorites. The answer, not often. Not often.
Okay.
So that's my favorite.
A very vivid picture. So they are a missionary who
A missionary,
consumes some media, but
a lot,
not too much.
not often. But I did get enough responses to share with you and with whoever wants to watch this on YouTube or listen to this on podcast. So I also thought I could ask you your thoughts, Joe. I can start with my answers if I remember them. I didn't actually write them down. I put them. I kind of wrote my answers to test my Google Sheets or Google questionnaire to make sure it was working. So I wrote my answers in that way. So my favorite authors, it said list 3. I think I listed Kitamori, Kazo Kitamori, who is the theology of the pain of God. We won't, I don't want to get into that. I've done a whole podcast on that. Can be listened to. I think I wrote Kosuke Koyama, who is famous for water buffalo theology, and a few other books. And I think my third guy was probably Kosuke Nishitani, who is not well known at all, but he wrote Understanding Japaneseness, which is about Japaneseness, and it helped me understand the topic. So I liked his book. I'll probably do more stuff with his. I've done actually, I think, 2 podcasts with his already. I'll turn it over to you. Do you have, if you didn't obviously do the survey, but if you had done the survey, what would you have thought?
Yeah. So I'll I'll show like a little bit of my shortcomings here. I don't tend to remember authors specifically very well, but yeah, I was trying to think through like, oh, what books have I read and have like found impactful, yeah, concerning Christianity in Japan. Um, yeah, I think obviously Silence comes to mind as like one of the first exposures that I had. And yeah, especially with like the movie, like fairly recently coming up in pop culture and things like that. Um, yep. So that came to mind. There's this
Okay.
one that I found very helpful. I believe the title is "Multiplying Churches in Japanese Soil," but I'd have
Okay.
to look
John
up who
Main.
the author actually was.
He's a
Oh,
big
okay. Yep.
CPI, like he might have been like a semi-founder of CPI or something. John
Okay.
Main, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that was helpful. I had to write a paper when I was still in classes for my MDiv, and then yeah, that was like one of the sources that I found pretty useful. Um, uh, what
Yeah.
is it?
And
Understanding the Japanese mind. Um,
Davies,
is that
that's
yeah?
Roger Davies, yeah.
Oh,
Wait,
yep,
no, that's
yeah.
is that understanding the Japanese mind?
Oh,
It's
the Japanese mind. Is that it?
I think so because I have it abbreviated TJM.
Mm,
So this
okay.
Ikeno, who I
Yes.
don't know, and Roger Davies to I think so
Mm,
the ones that you mentioned were all vote getters.
oh yeah.
Yeah. All they were all also voted on by CPI missionaries. Uh yeah. So the the top author I see so there was a number of authors that wrote multiple books that were mentioned in the surveys. So I decided to
Mm,
split authors getting votes and then like the top authors, I'll just let people know the books that they wrote that were mentioned because some authors wrote many books.
mm,
So you mentioned Silence
mm,
by Shusaku Endo. And Shusaku Endo was the second highest vote getter
mm,
among Japanese authors in the survey with I don't know if I should say because there was like 800 people there and I did not get,
mm,
I maybe had like 30 some ish surveys filled out. I kind of wanted to get more, but I felt like I was bothering people a little bit, begging them
mm.
to fill out my survey.
I
So like,
mean,
yeah,
it's good work. It's good work. Yeah.
yeah, it's good. And it was fun to it was more fun to just chat with people that were interested in chatting because there were a number of people. I've been encouraged as I've been doing this like for 2 years now to meet more and more missionaries who are interested in being contextual. So that's been cool.
Mm,
So yeah, Shusaku Endo was in second place. He had 8 votes. I'll just say it. In third place, was Makoto Fujimura. Have you heard of him?
uh, I don't think so.
So
Yeah,
he's an
at least not
American
by name.
artist. He
Um,
does art and then like poetry and stuff. I mean, he's Japanese American. And then he also, I
mm,
think, studied Japanese art. Actually, you know what? I I prepped this, so we're good. I um I wrote down I like Wikipedia'd people or
mm.
Chat GPT'd people, so that's totally accurate for sure. Um,
No hallucinations whatsoever.
yeah, yeah, no, everything's legit. Everything's above ground here. Let me see what I can find. Okay, just let me just back up on you mentioned Shisaku Endo. So
Mm,
according to shoot, is this I guess this is probably Wikipedia. Shisaku Endo was a Japanese author who wrote from the perspective of a Japanese Catholic. Internationally, he is known for his 1966 historical fiction novel Silence, which was adapted into a 2016 film of the same name, directed by director Martin Scorsese. He was the
mm.
laureate of several prestigious
Laureate. Yep.
literary
Mm,
laureate. Thanks, yeah. Prestigious literary accolades, including the Akutagawa Prize and the Order of Culture, and was inducted into the Roman Catholic Order of Saint Sylvester by Pope Paul VI. I didn't know that as I hadn't actually read the entry until now. But that's pretty cool.
Interesting facts, things I didn't know. Yeah.
Ah, things I hope to remember. Makoto Fujimura. So I was just like talking about him, but I'll just read what I think Wikipedia says about him. Makoto
Mhm.
Fujimura is an American artist. He is considered to be one of the leading figures of, air quotes here, slow art movement. He has coined the terms culture care and theology of making. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Bucknell University, then studied in a traditional Japanese painting doctorate program for several years at Tokyo University of the Arts with several notable artists such as Takashi Murakami and Hiroshi Senju. His bicultural arts education led his style towards a fusion between contemplative art and expressionism, using the traditional materials of Japanese art of Nihonga. His art is significantly influenced by Sen no Rikyu. That's what we have about Makoto Fujimura. I wonder, Joe, if you care to take a guess at who may have been the top vote getter for Japanese authors, or if they voted for this person's book, then I just added their name, as a vote for the author.
Yeah, I mean, my guess would have been Endo. So if he wasn't top, I kind of had no idea. So,
Yeah, 8 to 10. So it was close. And this other person
mm,
is also very well known in Japan. It's Miura Ayako, who
mm,
wrote, well, let me just start with her wiki. It's English wiki, so they flip the names. And Ayako
mm,
Miura, yeah, Ayako Miura was a Japanese novelist. She published over 80 works of both fiction and nonfiction. Many of her works are considered bestsellers, and a number have been remade as feature-length films. Her debut novel, Hyoten, which is freezing point in English, was published in
mm,
1964 and won the Asahi Shimbun's 10 million yen award that same year.
mm,
That's what Wikipedia has to say about her. Um,
mm.
and yeah, there are even ministries in Japan that it's like Miura Ayako Yomukai or something like that, where
Mm.
they have book clubs and then they discuss her books and people get saved. Is kind of the ministry.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was you or if it was my wife I was asking. We had some Japanese international students come to our church recently, and we were trying to think of a gift, like, oh, what to give them as they go back to Japan. And yeah, someone mentions like, oh, you should buy such and such book because Japanese people read it and they become Christian. And I
Yeah.
wonder if it's one of these books. Yeah.
Yeah. When you were in Japan, I mean, when we were up north, did you ever meet a guy named
Hmm.
Kohei? Uh, and his wife Linda. They had a
It
couple little
sounds familiar.
kids, and he was working at the other church with David, and he's like a
Yeah,
physical
must have.
therapist.
Yeah.
So he's a
Mm,
Japanese guy that lived in the States for like 20 years. Well, he's a missionary in Japan again. He was my guest a few years ago on this, and he
mm,
became a Christian by reading a Miura Ayako book. So
mm.
that was kind of cool. I guess he like moved to England or something to become a pro golfer or something like that. And he didn't become a pro golfer, but he's good at golf. But and then instead he became a
Nice.
Christian. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's doing missions in Japan now. Uh but yeah, it works. Somebody became a Christian that I know from Miura Ayako.
Mm,
So yeah, other vote. I'll just read the other vote getters that had at least a handful of votes. You mentioned the Ikeno Davies book,
mm,
The Japanese Mind. So that
mm,
was the next highest vote getting book. But compared to the previous books, these guys only had one book that they wrote. That was that book.
Mm,
The guys
yeah.
that were higher than them all had multiple books listed by various missionaries.
Mm.
So that's kind of interesting. Mitsuo
Is
Fukuda.
that the top nonfiction book? Sorry to
Oh,
interrupt.
no, that is, yeah, that is.
Interesting. Yeah.
No. Fujimura's books are nonfiction.
Yeah, yeah. But so you said the Japanese mind was the author of the Japanese mind was third, and then
A
that would be
fourth.
the fourth. Okay.
So the artist guy,
Oh, the artist,
he
right.
had
Forgot
the
the artist
culture
guy.
care
Yep.
and stuff. He had a couple books. I haven't
Mm,
read any of his stuff.
mm.
I've actually seen him on Twitter. I think he said he presented a piece of artwork to Barack Obama at
Oh,
some
there you
point.
go.
So he's I don't know, he's a big dog. I can't get him on my show, I don't think, you know. I mean, I could try,
Yeah, you
but
could try.
I could try, right? Could maybe just send him I could X him or Twitter him, you know what I mean? So
I
I'm
mean,
not sure if
the
that works.
Japanese Christian world, it's unfortunately a bit of a small pond at the moment, so you
Yeah,
never know.
yeah. Maybe he could present me with some artwork. That would be cool. Yeah,
That would be cool. That would be cool.
be cool. Stay tuned. So yeah, he was the third place, so he would be the highest nonfiction.
Mm,
But your guy was
yep.
right under him in
Mm,
votes, the Ikeno Davies combination. Just under that was Mitsuo Fukuda, who wrote Developing a Contextualized Church, I think, in Japanese soil, or something
mm,
like that. I mean, no, maybe not Japanese soil. Developing a Contextualized Church, I think is the way the title starts. I read
mm.
that. It was very good, I thought. One guy that I talked to this, and it may have been recorded as a vote, but I just wasn't paying attention he wrote, I'm going to write an X because I think this is a bad book. And then I was like, okay,
Oh,
whatever. So that might be one of his votes, might actually be
interesting.
anti-vote. Um, I think the point is that Fukuda he tries to be contextual to the point that this particular person thought he was being syncretistic.
Um,
You can read the book and
okay.
make your own conclusions. I liked it. It didn't it
Mm,
I could see why someone might say it felt syncretistic. He was like imagining potential rituals that could work, like that could help Japanese kind of zone in like on their worship experience, like holy water and stuff like that. And his point wasn't to make it sound Catholic,
yeah.
but to make it like, how do Japanese people connect spiritually? Like in their religions is more ritual based. So in Fukuda's imagination, using something similar for Protestant services could help Japanese people theoretically to kind of get in that
Mm,
worshipful religious experience. That's his thoughts. And so he suggested a few potential rituals, which I thought was like a pretty cool
so
contextual thing.
yeah, like the potentially, I don't know how you'd say it, syncretic nature of that would be like it defies like the proper means of worship or something, like you're
Oh,
not
I
meant to
think
have any ritual as like a core of Christianity or
no. So, for example, one of the rituals he
mm,
suggested had to do with salt, right? Which is like a
mm,
purification thing in Shinto. But I think he would quote scripture and say, like, well, we are the salt of the world. So,
mm,
sort of like imagining some sort of a ritual that has to do with salt could help,
mm,
again, being the point that rituals help with the Japanese like experience. I think
mm.
maybe that salt is also used in Shinto, maybe made the missionary that I'm talking about feel like this was a little too close to Shinto. I guess, there's a spectrum of how
Yeah.
people feel about
Mm,
syncretism and contextualization. And I think,
mm,
my point is just to kind of foster discussion. So, um, I had another person that was like, "Oh, I love Fukuda, and I'm writing a paper about Fukuda." And I
mm.
and I realized Fukuda's actually still alive. Another person that I contacted is in regular contact with him, but he's like 90. and he does stuff with the
Mm,
government now. Like, I think he felt like his work with the church wasn't really working. Like, so he's now working
mm,
on like government initiatives to help people and kind of promote Christian ethics and stuff that way. Something. I mean, I could totally be
mm.
misquoting what the person told me, but still working, I heard. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I don't want to like go on a huge tangent about syncretism or anything, but like one of the things I've thought about a lot lately is like, what's the line between contextualization and syncretism, and then how can we even identify it in like Western culture? And it's like, oh yeah, Christmas. Like
Yeah,
we flirt with syncretism a lot all the time, and I don't know if we're so hard on ourselves about it. Um,
exactly.
yeah,
That's
like
fun too
I feel like
because
some level of sophistication, like you said, like to continue with the dialogue of it, because how many conversations do I have to have about Santa to my kids, where it's like, oh well, we're doing this because it's fun, but that's not the truth, and Jesus, and that kind of thing.
Coca-Cola,
But,
right? With the modern Santa suit.
mm,
Yeah, my kids yesterday or something asked about, and I was like, well, Nicholas of Smyrna was a third century, or whatever, fourth century
mhm.
bishop
Yep,
or something.
yep. We have a Saint Nicholas book that
Oh
explains
yeah.
the original story and stuff. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So I mean, but yeah, there's definitely the Roman Catholic Church and then by extent, right, Protestantism, I think has
Mm,
a lot more syncretism than we realize when we point at. That's not to say that we shouldn't point, but that we should have awareness
mm.
of, you know, of our own potential stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot of good holidays in Japan that are probably traditionally discounted because they're too
Mm,
too like the moon, like the Tsukimi. Maki, my wife, everybody, my wife's name is Maki. Um, like researched it and found like first
mm,
people are like, oh, it's Shinto or it's Buddhist or
mm,
something. And then she researched it more and she was like, actually, it used to be just a harvest thing that was like
mm,
co-opted by either Shinto or Buddhism in order to like bring people into Shinto Buddhism. But before it was
mm,
Shinto Buddhist, it was just like a harvest thing.
mm.
And then this other dude that at a thing, this dude at a thing, I think it was a Japanese speaker at Gemma Connect last February, mentioned
Mm.
he subscribes to a Buddhist journal for Buddhist monks by Buddhist monks or something.
Oh, wow.
And they were encouraging other Buddhist monks to hold Christmas services to draw people into their temples.
Uh,
Like just use it, because apparently, religion in Japan is not just hard for Christians these days. It's like most religions are losing people in Japan, even
mm.
Buddhism and Shinto. So that's a big rabbit trail.
Yep. I mean, yeah, very interesting. Like one maybe final hot take. I don't know if you move with books, but yeah, uh, I made an argument in a paper once. I wish I could remember the original author of the essay I was referring to. This essay was talking about Obon and like the Buddhist background of Obon, and like what is it, like a Buddhist priest? He's like doing Buddhist stuff, I guess. And he has a vision of like his mom suffering in, like a hellish afterlife. Um, and then like that's part of the reason why you observe Obon is to like somehow alleviate like the suffering of your ancestors, like something along those lines. So then yeah, after like going through all the arguments in such and such paper, my conclusion was something like, as we think about you know contextualizing Christianity in Japan and things like that, and bringing holidays into church services and stuff, like, oh, does it really make sense to keep Easter at Easter. I mean, it makes sense to keep Easter at Easter for the sake of celebrating with the rest of the world. But as far as like having it this specific time of year, I mean, I don't particularly care about, when Jewish Passover is, which is like
Mhm.
kind of what dictated when
Mm.
Easter happens. Like, oh, could you kind of like, yeah, co-opt this Obon thing and like uh as far as what it means to be mindful of the afterlife and suffering and afterlife and being saved from damnation and in hell basically. It's like, oh, that could be something. And like, to what extent does that offend my like Western Christian mentalities of like, you would change Easter, how dare you even conceive of something like that? But
Schism
it's like, oh, right. Yeah.
again. But it
Yep.
it
Yeah.
would get the point across to Japanese people theoretically a lot quicker, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think I mean keeping it all in the theoretical, uh
Mhm.
I think that there could be something to that. Hope I didn't lose half my audience there. Probably not. Just just
just
thinking. Just thinking out
just
loud, right?
thinking, it's spitballing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The other guy that was tied with Fukuda was Kosuke Koyama, who was the guy, one of the
Mhm.
guys that I wrote. Water Buffalo Theology, No Handle on the Cross, and a number of other books.
Mhm.
He was a missionary from Japan to other places, ended up teaching seminary in various places, and I think retired in New York or Minnesota or something like that. He was a big like decolonization kind of guy.
Mhm.
I've really appreciated his stuff. I think I'd done an episode or two on parts of his work.
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh,
I haven't read it, Water Buffalo Theology, but I heard you talk about it, and then I read another like missions book where that author talked about that book, and then yeah, one of the comments was like a masterful handling or like analysis of like Eastern religion, like that kind of perspective. But
yeah.
they had some criticisms as well. But yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think with any of these guys, largely, like if you probably shouldn't agree 100% with anyone, A. And B, the point is to kind of just think, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me. So, like, I could say, oh, I love this dude. It doesn't mean I agree with, everything he says.
Mm-hmm.
But I like a lot of what Koyama says. And I could see how you could be like, oh, I don't like this part, but it could be like, well, if you toned it down just a bit, then we'd pretty much be in agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other category, which just means random, was like 8 votes of other random stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The number one book, I think, let's see, what was I guess the number one book since Miura Ayako had so many different books written, um, the books with the top votes was a tie. It was Japanese Mind, which was the only book by those authors, and then Miura Ayako's Shiokari Pass, which is or Shiokari Toge in Japanese, um, which is one of her most famous works. And then the vote getters after that were Silence, as you mentioned, by Shusaku Endo, and Silence and Beauty by Fujimura, which is the artist. I have, let's see, I have a little bit of information on stuff like Shiokari Pass. I don't know if that's going to just be super boring if I were to read like some stuff. One thing that's interesting is Shiokari Pass was made into a film and it's on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. So if
There you go.
you don't want to read the book, you want to just watch the movie, I think you can YouTube Shiokari Pass, Shiokari. And I think if you might need to turn the subtitles on and then but when I turned it on, it was like doing it in English, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have my speakers plugged in and my sound card's broken, so I couldn't tell if the sound was in Japanese or English. Uh, I think that the three books, when people voted for Miura Ayako, they mentioned Freezing Point, Shiokari Pass, and The Wind is Howling, which is another of
Mhm.
her. It says autobiographical novel. So I don't know if that's pseudo autobiographical or what, but um, that's another book by Miura Ayako. I actually read a Miura Ayako
Mm.
book when I first came to Japan, and it wasn't any of these. It was called Lady Gracia, and it was about the daughter of is it Mitsuhide Akechi? The guy that turned on uh Oda Nobunaga and the warlord, some the warlord that just about united Japan, but he was like a
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but he was like apparently, if I'm remembering sorry, he was pretty like bloodthirsty kind of guy. So one of
Mm.
his lieutenants or like his second right hand man guy turned on him, and then the other guys turned on him, and then Toyotomi like unified Japan, died, and then Tokugawa started the Tokugawa era. So the book that I read was a fictionalization of the daughter of the traitor who in real life was a Christian, I believe. And if you've
Um,
read Shogun or seen it, the fictional
mm.
character there, the main girl, is based on the same woman that
Ah,
the Lady Gracia story is based on in real life,
okay.
apparently. So I think those are both different fictionalizations of the same character, apparently, for what it's worth.
Very interesting. Well, people are hungry for more Shogun stuff. So there you go. It's a
Yeah,
good recommendation if you got through the series and you
you
need
got,
more.
yeah, well, I heard they're gonna make another season, but there wasn't a second novel. I mean, there was other
Right. Yeah.
novels, but they were like far in the future.
I read something like the I guess you could say like directors or writers of the show. They're like, oh no, like we got through the novel, we're happy with it. Like you gotta let a good story end. But then like the family of the author was like, well, wait a second. Like we're
Go
totally
well,
fine with you
go
making more
ahead,
stuff.
fanfic it
So
up, huh?
yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean
well,
it was good. It was good.
I actually haven't gotten through it because my wife didn't want to watch it with me after one episode. It was too violent.
Oh really?
And she said not to
Okay.
watch it with
Yeah,
my
yeah.
kids because of some of the other content that was in it. So I
Mm.
have not got through it yet, but I intend to, maybe after my finals and stuff.
Mm.
The three
So was
books.
was
Oh,
that book Oh, sorry, the one you read, like
hmm
are all her books like Christian themed?
hmm.
Did like does she write them intentionally to like convey a Christian point, or is it just like this is a story that involves Christian characters and then like God shows up in the midst of that or something?
So it's not like evangelical Christian fiction, which I
Mm,
haven't read in a while, but I used to read, which is pretty heavy-handed, right? At least the stuff that
mm,
I've read. Um, so the Lady Gracia novel, it was more like a novel where the main character was a Christian, and that was very apparent, but I wouldn't say it was
mm,
like evangelical. Like it wasn't
mm,
that wasn't the one of her books that you're going to read and become a Christian. Apparently, the messages in some of these other ones, like Shiokari Pass and Freezing Point, like the the themes are Christian enough that people read them and discuss them and become Christians. I think. We should ask Kohei which book it
yeah.
was that he read that converted him,
Mm,
Yeah. Um, I'll move on. Shusaku Endo had three books that were listed by people in the survey. That was, of course, Silence. Another one was The Life of Jesus, which is the story of Jesus, but it's very so according to ChatGPT, Endo portrays Jesus as a figure of profound compassion and human vulnerability, emphasizing his empathy for the suffering and marginalized. Um, I recommended to my mom to read that. For the listener, I think Joe knows my mom. Joe's met my mom, I think. Yeah, you met my mom.
Have met, yes.
Yeah. She's half Okinawan, so for the
Mm.
reader, for context, for the listener, let the listener know. You know, she likes Japanese stuff, though she's not a missionary in Japan. Nor does she speak Japanese, but her mother did, obviously. She hated the book, she said. I mean, she probably wouldn't
Mm.
use such strong language, but she said she disliked it, and I think it was because she said Jesus was too weak, which I think is just a
Um,
fabulous contextualization point.
mm.
The American evangelical, like, Jesus is invincible, right?
Mm.
The Japanese Christian Jesus is very vulnerable, I think. And I think that the Japanese like the connection of Jesus with vulnerable people much, maybe more than American evangelicals tend to. So I thought that point, that the reason my mom disliked the book is probably the reason why it's an interesting contextual study,
Mm.
I think.
Yeah.
I have it, but
I
I haven't read it.
I got similar vibes from Silence. Like I don't know if you wanted to talk about Silence at some other point, but um yeah, I feel like it took me a long time to kind of come to an understanding of um the point he was trying to make. And then it might have actually been through the interpretation of like a YouTube video essayist like explaining it more, where I forget the like characters' names, but yeah, that one, the Jesuit priest you follow through the story, like yeah, by the end it seems like a big like failing on his part to like give up, right?
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
no spoilers, right? um and yeah, it seemed like kind of the point was like yeah, he was trying to be like the superhero, right? Like it was him trying to convert people and things like that. And kind of the point was for him to like you know let it go and to really hand it over to Jesus, I guess. And like Jesus can like in a way like Jesus can take it. Like it's okay. Like he can not that he could take it in like that, Superman like bullets like bounce off of him kind of a way, but like he can shoulder the burden of it.
Yeah.
Something like that. That kind of feeling. But
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was talking about it with a professor in ethics class, and I think he was saying, like, I think, like, Jesus' sort of mission was one of self-sacrifice.
mm,
And so this priest in the end needed to make a decision that was similarly self-sacrificing, even though it was not the ending that I think a lot of us from the West were hoping for. I remember talking to a missionary, older missionary, and he was like, "Man, I just wanted to throw the book after I read it."
yeah,
So,
yeah, understandable. But yeah.
yeah, but those are just the types of things that are good for us, I think, is those ones that
Mm,
really make us sweat, you know. The last book that was listed by Endo was The Samurai. Have you heard of that?
no, yeah, don't think I've heard of it before.
Yeah, I bought it, and I haven't read it yet. So it's just like one of these days I'm just
Mm,
gonna read all these books, you know. It's so I asked ChatGPT to give me a short summary, and it's poignant. Oh, gosh, how do you
mm.
even say that? Poignant? Is it?
Poignant, yeah,
Yeah, it's like
something
with a
like that.
G in the middle. A poignant
English.
historical
It's
novel. English is just terrible, isn't it? Huh. Follows the journey of a low-ranking samurai and a Spanish missionary as they embark on a perilous diplomatic mission to Europe in the early 17th century. The story explores themes of loyalty, faith, and cultural misunderstanding through the eyes of the samurai. Endo offers a profound meditation on the collision of worlds, the sacrifices demanded by duty, and the quiet resilience of the human spirit in the face of upheaval. Sounds very Endo,
yeah.
which I think, yeah, I think that's cool. I've read Silence quite a while ago at this point. That's the only Endo book I've read, and I haven't even seen the movie yet, but I want to.
I would recommend. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it looked good. Um, I don't know. I just have a hardest time these days watching movies. They're so long, and
Um,
I
well,
often
shorter than a
have.
book, I guess, but
That's true. That's true. But like nobody wants to watch movies with me. Like everything I want to watch is usually a little too scary for my wife. And my kids are just like they're gonna just watch YouTube or something. So lately I
yeah,
watched
I
movies with
mean,
my 8-year-old and 6-year-old, but not
okay.
Silence.
Yeah, maybe not recommended for 8 or 6 year old, but
Yeah.
like, yes, mm, it's not a feel good, you know, rom-com. You
Right.
watch it purposefully, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, it's again, I intend to
Mm.
at some point. Fujimura's books, I have not read any of them. Culture Care, Art Plus Faith, like a plus, like a actual plus sign, Art Plus Faith,
Mm.
and then Silence and Beauty. Um, yeah, I think that these are maybe like essays. They could actually be art books. I'm not sure. Um, let's see, Hidden
Yeah,
Layers
I'm
of
curious.
Beauty Within Silence and Brokenness, Meditation on Grace and Redemption.
Mm.
They sound good. Um, but yeah, those were the books by the like top guys. Since I love books, we could just talk forever about books, but maybe we should move on to podcasts.
Mm.
So there were because I was giving people multiple options, and there's obviously a lot of variety in what people like, what podcasts people like. I don't know. What are your three? Can you off the top of your head name three Christian podcasts that you like?
Yeah, so I'm not huge on the scene. I guess I watch a lot more YouTube than I
Okay.
listen to podcasts, but I probably should. I mean, I do enjoy audiobooks a lot. I think it'd probably be an easy transition for me to get into podcasts. Um, yeah, like I see Bible Project. I have listened to Bible Project a few times. I thought that was pretty good stuff. Um, I'm not too sure. I wonder if Winger is Mike Winger or if it's some other thing. So there's this, I don't know if he has a
Yeah.
podcast, but there's this guy, Mike Winger,
Oh, he's a YouTuber, yeah.
that, yeah, YouTuber. Um,
I think he got a vote or two
other than
on
that,
this.
yeah, it's just JCATS, JCATS all the way.
Yeah, I tried to remember to put
Would recommend
what's your
number one.
favorite besides JCATS because I figured everybody would probably, I didn't, I can't, my ego can't take it if I say what's your favorite and nobody votes for mine. So anyway, yeah, on the list you mentioned it, the top vote getter, including one of my votes was the Bible Project. Um,
Mm.
one person put Seisho Project, and maybe there was that person that was listening to it in Japanese, because
Mm.
they have a lot of translated content. I like that for stuff that I feel like is pretty original context, at least compared to a lot of the other like American or whatever. Nothing's pure, right? contextually.
Mm,
But I feel like the Bible Project gets at the original context pretty well for something as
mm.
accessible as it is. That's why I voted for it among my three.
Yeah, that's a good way to articulate it, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The second place was a apparently it's a Christian news podcast. The World and everything in it got a couple of votes. I think it might be World Magazine
Yeah, I
or
never
World.
heard of it before.
It's yeah. When I listen to news on a podcast, I listen to one called The Pour Over, which is cheesy because they make
Mm.
everything coffee themed. So they're like, here's a couple of uh shots of espresso or whatever, and then they give you like little news bits. But I feel like
Okay. I mean,
it's like it's almost like if you look at news is so horrible that you just want a quick shot of it like once every couple of
mm.
days, then you can listen to that and they're like, but don't worry, Jesus said that I am with you, or so it's like, oh my gosh, thank you. So yeah,
Yep.
but that didn't get any votes at all. Not even mine, because it wasn't the top three. The next, so the other what would essentially be a tie for second place after the Bible Project, and then tied with the world and everything in it was, I think it's called With the Perrys, which is
Um,
Jackie Hill Perry. Do you know her?
nope. Yeah,
Okay, I
no
think
idea.
she's a Christian, and I think she wrote Good Girl, no, Good God, Gay Girl, or something like that, where
Um,
she wrote she had, um, I don't know, lesbian, I don't know what you say, tendencies, or, she was a lesbian, and then she
mm,
became a Christian and she got married, um, something like that. And she is, I don't know if she's a like a rap lyricist or artist. I don't know if she actually does rap or just like poems, but something like that. And
mm,
her husband Preston, who I've heard on another one of these podcasts, that got votes, Theology in the Raw. I heard him on that podcast. Uh, he does apologetics stuff. And I guess they have a podcast together, which
mm.
was one of the higher vote getting podcasts among missionaries at CPI.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, there was like a lot of podcasts that got one vote. Um,
Mm. I guess it's a wide landscape.
yes, JCATS got one vote,
Woo.
even though I forgot to put
Nice.
besides JCATS on a lot of ballots. So, but that's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Although lately I've been listening to one that's not a Christian podcast. It's Fall of Civilizations is what it's called, and
Um,
it's just super well researched, and it's like what happened to the Aztecs, or what happened
okay.
to Sumer, or Egypt,
Mm,
or like this particular dynasty in China, and
yeah, yeah.
it's very
Learn
interesting.
about the what is it, the Bronze Age collapse and all that stuff.
Yes, that was one of I listened to exactly the fall of the Bronze Age.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's a big deal, I guess. Like
yeah.
how it ties in with biblical historicity and all that stuff.
Right, right. Yeah. And I was listening to another like a teaching series on early Genesis because my church was doing Abraham, and they
Mm,
were trying to place Abraham early. And then so listening to like the fall of Sumer, I think, and they were talking about
mm,
Ur, which is where Abraham was from.
mm,
And so it was really interesting hearing the rise and fall and rise again of Ur, and then where Abraham
mm,
may have fit in with that. cross-referencing it with the other podcast. That was fun. So I don't know. That's got nothing to do with. I mean, it's not a Christian. It's a history podcast.
Mm.
So I'm kind of cheating because I think a lot of people would have liked to put their favorite podcasts that weren't specifically Christian. But now I'm talking about podcasts that were disallowed in the
Uh, it's your show. That's okay.
thanks. I appreciate that, Joe. Um yeah, I mean other than that was kind of what I wanted to go over today was just that
Mm.
those I wanted to connect with my CPI survey collaborators with thanks, give the results of those
Mm.
surveys. If I did not read off your particular votes, my apologies. That's all. My apologies.
Mm.
Yeah.
Next time, the next
Oh
survey,
gosh.
right?
Oh, the next survey. I was gonna say next time. All the stuff that didn't make the final three. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know, Joe. Well, I think I'm gonna wrap up the recording. So thank you, Joe, for
No
coming
problem.
on.
My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah.